Chapter 1 of the book An Immortal's Quest for Vedic Soma by Rama. Rama is a lawyer and a partner at a top-tier law firm, trilegal in New Delhi, India. The views are personal. The book is a work of fiction. Chapter 1. The Wound That Would Not Heal. Ashvatthama had lived too long. Most men fear death because they do not know what follows it. Ashvatthama feared another sunrise, another century, another empire, another priest claiming that God had spoken only to him, another king killing in the name of order, another scholar polishing violence until it looked like philosophy. He had once been a warrior in the great war remembered as the Mahabharata. In that war, he saw every grand word become a weapon. Dharma became strategy. Strategy became deceit. Deceit became victory. Victory became scripture. His father Drona was not defeated in fair combat. He was broken by a trick. Krishna, the beloved strategist of the Pandavas, guided a plan in which Drona was made to believe that his son Ashvatthama had died. The half-truth was neat. An elephant named Ashvatthama had been killed. A father heard the name and lost the will to fight. To the victors, the plan was wisdom. To Ashvatthama, it was murder by language. He answered with rage. He entered the sleeping camp of his enemies and killed. The world called him cursed. Krishna condemned him to wander, deathless, wounded, and alone. That question never left him. Does right and wrong depend on power? When Krishna deceived, it became divine strategy. When Ashvatthama avenged, it became sin. Was Dharma a truth or was it a throne? For a global reader, he sometimes compared himself with Achilles. Achilles too was a warrior of rage. Achilles too burned when honor was wounded. Achilles too stood in the shadow of a war that made heroes out of grief. But Achilles could die. That was his mercy. Ashvatthama was denied even that. Ashvatthama's mind returned to the two war books that had followed him across ages, the Iliad and the Bhagavad Gita. Both stood near battle. Both allowed war to enter the sacred or heroic imagination, but they did not do so in the same manner. The Iliad gave him rage, grief, pity, honor, exhaustion, and the unbearable sadness of men who know too late that glory is a poor substitute for the lost face of a friend. It legitimized war by making warriors beautiful, but it also diagnosed war as a sickness of honor. Achilles was terrifying because he was wounded inside. Hector was noble because he knew Troy would fall. Priam kissing the hand of the man who killed his son was not a doctrine. It was a human wound placed before the reader. The Gita to Ashvatthama went further. It did not merely show war, it offered a way to think war into duty. Krishna did not tell Arjuna that war was sad and unavoidable only in the tragic sense. He taught him to fight as Dharma, without hatred, without attachment, without ego. This was philosophically grand, but also dangerous. A sword held without hatred still cuts. A battle sanctified by detachment may become harder to resist than a battle driven by anger. This was where Buddha stood apart in Ashvatthama's mind. Buddha did not refine the psychology of righteous war. He tried to move the human being away from the hunger that makes war appear righteous. The contrast would later become central to Ashvatthama's search. Was Soma meant to make warriors fearless or to dissolve the very ego that creates warriors? Yet he was not an atheist. He had seen too much to reject the unseen. He still believed that the universe sometimes hides medicine inside punishment. Perhaps immortality was not merely a curse. Perhaps it was a task delayed for thousands of years. These days, a new disturbance had entered his mind. On glowing screens, young men with confident voices spoke of the lost Vedic Soma. They showed red and white mushrooms. They invoked Siberian shamans, Mesoamerican priests, secret cults, and the mysteries of consciousness. Some said the sacred drink of the Rig Veda was Amanita muscaria. Others said it was psilocybin mushrooms. Others offered ephedra, harmala, cannabis, opium, or mixtures. Every theory sounded like a key. Every key opened a different door. Ashvatthama found the mushroom claim strange. He had walked India for centuries. He had seen bhang on Shivratri, bhang at Holi, bhang in the hands of sadhus, bhang in the courtyards of Rajasthan, bhang in the songs of Shiva. He had seen ganja smoked in alleys, opium served in warrior communities, alcohol offered to Bhairava. But he had not seen India gather around magic mushrooms as sacred food. Why then were foreign seekers so eager to place mushrooms in the heart of the Veda? To Ashvatthama, this looked less like discovery and more like a backward projection. A modern desire was traveling into the ancient past and returning dressed as revelation. Still, he did not dismiss the question. Soma was not a small word. In the Rig Veda, Soma was drink, plant, god, power, exhilaration, immortality, poetry, and courage. In the Iranian Avesta, Hauma stood like its cousin, perhaps its twin, perhaps its rival. The learned said Soma and Hauma came from a shared Indo-Iranian memory. The faithful said Soma came from divine revelation. The modern said the plant was lost. Lost things attract priests, traders, and dreamers. Ashvatthama knew one thing clearly. If Soma was Indian, it should have left an Indian smell. A leaf, a ritual, a folk memory, a festival, a name, a wound in the language, a plant hiding in plain sight. He thought of Shiva, the Lord who wore ass and snakes, who accepted the rejected, who smiled at bhang, who sat outside the polished manners of courts. If any god could answer without becoming a priest, it was Shiva. So Ashvatthama left the foothills of the Himalayas and began walking toward Varanasi. Varanasi was not merely a city, it was an argument with death. There, fire ate bodies beside the Ganga. Bells rang while skulls cracked in flame. Life bargained with ash every dawn. At the Ghats, Ashvatthama would meditate on Shiva. He would not ask for comfort. He would ask for Soma, and somewhere under the old wound on his forehead, he felt the beginning of fear. Not fear that Soma would remain hidden, fear that it would be found, and with it, many other lies. On the road to Varanasi, the question of war followed him. He saw news clips from distant wars on cracked mobile screens. Children stood among ruins. Commentators spoke of security, retaliation, historical rights, sacred land, and strategic necessity. The words had changed from Kurukshetra, but the rhythm had not. Every side carried a wound and called the wound a mandate. Ashvatthama wondered whether the first step toward Soma was not identification of a plant, but recovery of a forbidden imagination, a world without war. The phrase looked naive to generals, it looked impractical to kings, it looked dangerous to priests whose gods required enemies. But to an immortal who had seen the repetition of the slaughter, it looked like the only practical idea left. Perhaps Soma was lost because war had won. Perhaps no society that worshipped victory could preserve the drink of inner dissolution for long. It would either turn Soma into a battle tonic or bury it beneath metaphors or hand it to priests who would guard it from the people. The road from the Himalayas was not straight. No road in India is straight if one has lived long enough to know what lies beside it. Ashvatthama moved through pilgrim towns, bus stands, army cantonments, tea stalls, roadside shrines, and cities where glass towers rose over forgotten tanks. Every few miles, the past changed costume. At a village near the foothills, an old man recognized him, not by face. No one truly recognized Ashvatthama's face anymore. The wound changed with the centuries. Sometimes it looked like disease, sometimes like a burn, sometimes like a jewel rotting under the skin. The old man recognized him by the way dogs fell silent when he passed. "You are looking for someone," the old man said. "For something," Ashvatthama replied. The old man laughed. In India, something always becomes someone. That sentence stayed with him. Soma had been plant, drink, god, moon, power, memory. It had crossed the border between object and being. Perhaps that was why the mystery refused to die. A plant can be lost, a god can hide, a drink can become metaphor, a metaphor can become business. That night he slept under a peepal tree and dreamed of Kurukshetra. He saw not the battle as poets remembered it, but the battle as the ground remembered it. Broken chariots, horses screaming with their eyes open, men calling mothers they had not seen for years, priests searching for intact bodies so the rites could be performed properly, crows descending before the smoke had cleared. In the dream, no one spoke of Dharma. At dawn, he woke with the taste of iron in his mouth. The screen of a young pilgrim's phone was glowing nearby. A video was playing. A smiling foreign researcher held up a mushroom and said, the secret of the Veda had been misunderstood for thousands of years. The youth watched with reverence. Aswathama almost laughed, not because the claim was impossible. He had lived too long to dismiss impossibility. He laughed because humans had not changed. They still wanted salvation to arrive from elsewhere, a foreign plant, a secret cult, a hidden code, a lost priesthood. They still preferred mystery when the ordinary demanded reform. Bhang grew in lanes where poor men walked. Soma, if it was Bhang, would not require a castle of speculation. It would require India to look at its own cup without shame. Still, he disciplined himself. Suspicion was useful, contempt was not. The mushroom claim would be examined, every claim would be examined. Even his love for Shiva would be examined. Otherwise, he would merely be another believer defending the answer he preferred. Before reaching Varanasi, he wrote the first rule of his quest on a scrap of paper. The plant must not be chosen because it comforts the seeker. He wrote the second rule below it. The answer must explain not only the hymn but the silence around the hymn. Then he folded the paper and placed it inside his cloth bag. As he walked, the old question returned. Could humanity imagine a world without war? Not as a slogan for speeches, but as a discipline of imagination. Kurukshetra had been called inevitable. Troy had been called inevitable. Crusades, conquests, partitions, invasions, revolutions, retaliations. Each arrived wearing the mask of necessity. But necessity was often only desire after it had found a priest. Ashvatthama wondered whether Soma, whatever its plant, had once been a rebellion against that necessity. A cup that dissolved the boundary between self and other would be dangerous to kings. A warrior who felt the enemy's fear might not strike. A priest who saw the same hunger in all castes might lose his ladder. A ruler who tasted the smallness of his ego might return land. Perhaps that is why sacred drinks are always captured by power. They either become battle tonics, temple property, or forbidden substances. Freedom in a cup is too unstable for organized authority.